Hello and welcome to the Hooniverse and to a brand new video. Now I think it's easy to say that our favourite Time Lord is the Doctor, a hero to many travelling the universe righting wrongs, but what of the other Time Lords that didn't choose a life of duty watching the universe go by? The Doctor wasn't the only renegade of Gallifrey to run across the stars. The Rani is one of these Time Lords who ran, a brilliantly intelligent scientific mind who became the second most wanted criminal in the universe, second only to the Master, experimenting with creatures, their biology and galactic evolution, whatever the cost, with no remorse or pity. The Rani has 2 incarnations that we know of and travelled in her own TARDIS and encountered many incarnations of the Doctor and the Master too. So, let's dive into the history of the Rani from the early days of Gallifrey to her evil experiments throughout time and space. In the beginning, as the sky of Gallifrey burnt orange against the slopes of red grass, the Rani was born with the name Ushus. Now Ushus was actually born the same day as the Doctor according to the Time Lords, who in reality were lying. Instead it's more likely it was the day the Doctor had their memories stolen and began life anew. Now as a time tot, Ushus would be driven insane by the young Doctor's ability to find her as they played hide and seek back when life was simple. Then, as time moved forward, the pair attended the Time Lord Academy, with the Rani being the most intelligent, including the 8 others who attended in her group. They became known as the Decker, and they also became part of the Prydonian chapter. Now as part of initiation to the Academy and to truly become a Time Lord, Ushus would stare into the untempered schism, a gap in the fabric of reality showing the raw power of the time vortex, an initiation that is known to inspire or breed insanity in the minds of young Gallifreyans. And at the Academy, she was good at everything, but at chemistry especially, with neurochemistry being her speciality. Now River Song, having heard tales of the Time Lords, suggested that the Doctor might have even had a crush on Ushus at the Academy. Ushus was on an Academy research project when the Doctor was expelled from the Academy. However, the Doctor was still invited to her 94th birthday party, and later her graduation party, which the 7th Doctor remembered fondly, as Ushus showed off a giant mouse she'd created. Now it was this giant mouse that would begin her downfall in Time Lord society and lead her to become the Rani. As 5 years before the first Doctor and Susan would leave Gallifrey in a stolen TARDIS, Ushus was experimenting when her mice grew to enormous size and ate the Lord President's pet cat. They also bit the President himself. The President at the time, Pandad IV, regenerated due to this powerful bite. This all resulted in the Time Lord's issue of Exile to Ushus, or perhaps her own decision to leave out of shame. Either way, Ushus stole and piloted a TARDIS to the planet Miasmagoria and began her experiments anew, not as Ushus anymore, but as the Rani. Now the Rani brought industry and more to the planet and became its ruler. Based in a palace decorated with statues of herself, all while ruling the planet, she frequently conducted experiments in other parts of time and space. She visited the Earth plenty of times without being found by the Time Lords. If the Rani was one thing, it was careful. She kept the same body all the time, while the Doctor was already on his 6th at this time, and the Master at over a dozen. The Rani took pride in her work, placing a T-Rex embryo inside her TARDIS, and in her spare time invented mind-controlling worm parasites. But this wasn't her main aim. No, the Rani began in a great experiment with the objective to heighten the awareness of Miasmagorians and make them into geniuses. Now one of her first experiments, a boy named Raj Kanu, who was smarter at the age of 1 than that of someone at the age of 3. However, the process made the people, including Raj, unable to sleep, and caused mayhem, her world in chaos, leading the Rani to leave the planet to find a solution. Now the Rani visited Earth at various points in its history to extract chemicals from the brains of selected human specimens, because the chemicals in question enabled the human brain to sleep, and because the absence of these chemicals made her victims as violent and uncontrollable as those from her previous experiments, the Rani deliberately chose periods of social unrest to visit, using the violence to conceal her presence and its consequences. She visited times such as the Trojan War, the Dark Ages, the American Revolutionary War, and finally the Luddite riots in the village of Killingworth during the early 19th century, where she used the local bathhouse as her base, posing as the old woman in charge of the premises. However, as time passed, the Tremas Master found her and stole a vial of the essential brain fluid, forming an uneasy partnership as the two realised the Doctor would disturb their plans. The Master, that of destruction, the Rani of science, but both equal in chaos. The 6th Doctor and Peri did what they could to help the miners near the bathhouse, who had been without sleep. The Doctor even snuck aboard the Rani's TARDIS and stole the necessary brain fluid, while also sabotaging her TARDIS, and as the Master and the Rani fled, the TARDIS began to show faults with its navigation system, knackered, a time leak affecting the T-Rex embryo, with the dinosaur growing and growing as the two renegade Time Lords hurtled into the time vortex. Now what happened next? Well, there's 3 different outcomes in the timelines. That or the Rani and the Master are full of pride and tend to tell lies for the betterment of their reputations. One version has the Rani continuing to work with the Tremors Master, with the two of them having used their combined talents to survive the Tyrannosaurus Rex embryo growing. Returning to Earth, the Rani created the Plague of Athens, which devastated Athens during the Peloponnesian War, attempting to cause the Spartans to win, so that she could use them as test subjects. However, the Master's attempt to lure the 6th Doctor into the trap resulted in this scheme failing, with history not being changed. Now, fleeing from this failure, the duo then went to Terra Nova in 2046, the first major interstellar human colony planet. The Rani used her talents to alter the local flora and fauna to make it more dangerous to humans, but the 6th Doctor interfered, causing the wildfire to grow beyond the Rani's control, so the pair of Time Lords fled once more. The Rani and the Master then went to the Middle East in the 7th century to replenish the Rani's parasites. After they were discovered, the Rani abandoned the Master and returned to her base on Miasmagoria. Now, flashing back to the Master and the Rani, and what else could have happened, with that dinosaur grown to such a size that it broke its neck on the ceiling of the TARDIS, and the Rani had been left adrift in her TARDIS while the Tremors Master escaped from her by detaching the console room from the rest of the TARDIS. Shortly afterwards, from the Doctor's subjective point of view, the Rani was also trapped along with the 6th Doctor on Terra Nova, which the entity known as I Am had created. However, she did manage to escape Terra Nova by using the entity to create a new TARDIS console room to replace the one the Master escaped in. The final version of these events saw the Rani's next encounter with the 6th Doctor and Peri take place on Kotoria. The Rani had been inspired by her experience with the Tyrannosaurus Rex embryo to create a new form of dinosaur servant. So on Kotoria, the Rani went by the name of Lamia. She was genetically modifying pterodactyls in order to take blood and tissue samples of Koturians for the purpose of learning about phasing. She believed that she could learn of a way to control the outcome of a regeneration by learning how Koturians control their appearance when they phase. She immersed herself in Koturian culture and even became engaged to Jonas, an upper-class Koturian. However, their marriage ceremony was crashed by the 6th Doctor and Peri Brown, the former of whom was invited as old friends of Jonas's father, Everest Makeshi. Although they were too late to stop the physical ceremony, it failed to result in Jonas completing his phase because both bride and groom have to be in love with one another for the Emori stone to work, and the Rani was only pretending to be in love with Jonas. Although the Rani claimed to be immune to emotion, the Doctor believed she felt some kind of emotional attachment to her work, as she did beg him to not destroy her research by saying, "Please." Now, even with her failure on Kotoria, she had learnt enough of dinosaurs, so much so the Rani once attempted to revert 20th century Earth to the Cretaceous period, but was foiled by the 6th Doctor. It was later in the Rani's life on the planet Tetrap she decided to employ the Tetraps, led by Urag. Now with them, she invaded the peaceful planet of Lacertia and put into motion a complex plan to abduct 11 scientific geniuses from across time and space, including Albert Einstein of Earth. Now, to harness that strange matter needed to make Lacertia into a time manipulator in order to correct what she considered to be errors in the universal timeline, with the death of the Tetraps and Lacertians being a small price to pay. As this plan neared its completion, the Rani decided to collect the Doctor and attacked his TARDIS with concentrated beams of radiation lethal to Time Lords, wounding the Doctor so much so that it triggered his regeneration into his 7th incarnation. Now, disguising herself as the Doctor's companion, Mel Bush, the Rani used amnesia drugs to convince the Doctor that her project was actually his, in order to better ensure his cooperation in completing her work. Now, once the Doctor had finished the calculation, the Rani confined him with the other geniuses and channeled their intellects into a giant artificial brain, which she believed could find the answer as to how to create a lightweight substitute for strange matter, since strange matter was incredibly heavy and could only be destroyed by strange matter. Now, when it was devised, she sent a missile containing the substance aimed at a strange matter asteroid. However, the Doctor, using his unstable mind as a virus, destroyed the brain and redirected the missile. Now Yorak led the Tetraps against the Rani when he learnt she planned to betray them, and they placed her under house arrest in her TARDIS on Tetrapius. It was some time later, when the Tetraps faced a food shortage crisis, that Yorak managed to have the Rani put on trial, deeming house arrest not good enough. So when she was given the death sentence, Yorak bargained with her to solve the food shortage or her sentence would commence. Now giving her 2 humans and 2 alien prisoners as test subjects for the experiments, that would solve the crisis. The Rani, however, teamed up with her 4 guinea pigs and managed to escape the planet. Each then went their separate ways, with the Rani swearing to teach Yorak a lesson and retrieve her TARDIS from him. And it was having regained ownership of her TARDIS, she arrived on the planet DV 8. There, she rescued a young humanoid named Sirian from a troop of Cybermen and took him on as her travelling companion, though in effect he became her servant. And during their travels, the Rani taught him enough about the workings of the TARDIS for him to operate the control console. Now the Rani hatched a plan to harness the power of a time tunnel and gain control over galactic evolution once more. Now to do so, she collected a vast collection of all sentient life forms from across space and time inside of her TARDIS. The last specimen she required was a human from Earth. Now knowing that the Doctor would attempt to stop her, she set out to incapacitate him in all of his incarnations, and after successfully capturing the 1st and 2nd Doctor, the Rani trapped the 7th Doctor and the rest of his predecessors inside of a time loop on Albert Square. Fearing that he had figured out her plan, she released her collection of her specimens into the square, and to finalise her experiment, she captured Romana too, mistaking her from one of the Doctor's human companions. But since Romana 2 was a time lady, the Rani's computer lacked a human specimen and instead had 2 time brains. Now after Romana escaped, the Doctor took advantage of this error and forced her computer to overload, resulting in her TARDIS being sucked into the time tunnel. Now after all these adventures, the Rani's body wore itself out, and she regenerated under unknown circumstances into her next incarnation. It was with this new body she masqueraded as Professor Baxton at the College of Advanced Galactic Education, a foremost authority of moral philosophy. The Rani once again encountered the 6th Doctor and Perry Brown, despite her expecting the 7th Doctor to show up. The Doctor questioned her about her theories in one of her lectures. She tested the students and used the tests to find suitability for her experiments. She was using the students' minds in order to calculate the minor events she would need in order to create the massive events she wanted. In effect, reverse engineering chaos theory. Now the 6th Doctor foiled the plan, but even so, the Rani couldn't help but gloat about her part in the Doctor's next regeneration. She was sent to Tekarora Penitentiary, a prison for her misdemeanours. 97 years after her imprisonment, she became the governor of the prison. Using the prison as her base of operations, she used the prisoners to power a time corridor to Miasmagoria, where 16 years had passed since she originally left the planet all that time ago. Now it turns out the Rani's experimental child, Raj Kanu, became a success. You could say the only one of her experiments to actually work completely and correctly. She showed some emotion when she thought the Raj was dead, but was soon put on trial by her subjects on Miasmagoria, where the 6th Doctor said he would take her back to Gallifrey. She pleaded with the now Prince Kanu to show some compassion in sentencing her, but instead tried to kill him. She escaped in a TARDIS survival pod that her previous incarnation had left there. But what happened to the Rani next? Well, as the Time War erupted and caused chaos with the timelines, ripping lives apart, the Time Lord became lost in the fires of war. By the time the Doctor entered his 9th incarnation, the Time War had come to a close, and with its conclusion that he wouldn't see the Rani again, he was, in his mind, the last of the Time Lords. Although as events changed and Gallifrey rose and fell again, there's always a chance the Rani lives on. But there's a lot of deadly dangers out there for a Time Lord, from the TARDIS-consuming asteroids to the most terrible creatures. Is the Rani alive somewhere, hiding away? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Or just go mad theorising, but for now, that is the history of the Rani. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a like. Comment below your thoughts on the Rani, as this year marks 40 years of the character. And of course, subscribe to see more brilliant videos. From working out the mysteries of the Doctor to diving into the history of monsters, classic and new, the Whoniverse is the place to be. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.